For our discussion segment, we'll be looking at the new minimum wage. Yesterday, President Bola Tinubu made history by signing the new minimum wage bill into law, pegging the national minimum wage at 70,000 naira. This development has sparked excitement and curiosity among Nigerian workers, economists, and the general public. So on today's discussion, we're putting the spotlight on the new minimum wage and its implications for the Nigerian workers, the economy, and the country at large. And we'll be discussing the pros and cons, the expected impact on the cost of living, and how this move will affect businesses and industries. So joining us in the studio today, we have the spokesman of Nigerian Labour Congress, Comrade Benson Upah. You're welcome. Thank you for joining us, sir.
My pleasure.
And then via Zoom, we have an economist and financial analyst and lead researcher at Steward Asset Management, Steve Nwachukwu. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Steve.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so Nigerians, grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and let's dive right into this conversation. But I'll start with Mr. Benson. One very curious question that has been on, I wouldn't want to use my lips particularly, but on the lips of Nigerians. We had a peg of 250,000 for minimum wage. How come we're having 70,000 being signed finally?
Yeah, we have tried to answer this question in the recent past. Quite true, we actually demanded for 615,000 as the national minimum wage, and we justified that by breaking it down. Even at that time, the figures didn't match the living wage, the cost of living statistics. We came down in the spirit of fair negotiation to 500 to 400, and then we came to 250,000. And then we got stuck there when government was not moving up quickly, because government was pricing the national minimum wage like Maggi or Kwehe or whatever. So we didn't quite like that, and that led to a 2-day national protest. And government said, well, come back now, come back to the negotiating table. We're going to make an offer you can't say no to. And we believed government and went in only for government to now put 2,000 naira on top of it. That, of course, costs expected outreach amongst our ranks. While that was going on, governors came with another level of argument, saying they can't even pay the 60 or 57,000 naira that government actually offered. We found that quite mischievous, and we knew that was not the mainstream of the governors' forum talk. That talk was led by a minority group of governors who take delight in visiting pain and misery on their workers. Because prior to that time, 2 governors already paid 70,000. More governors had said, we will pay whatever is finally agreed upon. So, having said all of this, Mr. President now decided to personally intervene and invited us for a conversation and reiterated the willingness of government to pay 62,000 and nothing more. And if he was going to add a couple more, something will have to give way and all of that. Of course, that didn't quite gel with us. But at the second meeting, to cut a long story short, he made the offer of 70,000. And we had to cut a deal at that point in time. You know, if you are a good negotiator, you know when to cut a deal. If you cut a deal, you have something in your kitty. The next day you can come back and negotiate further. But if you don't cut a deal, you walk away with nothing in your kitty. So we cut a deal. Of course, we knew full well that 70,000 was not the best of bargain, but we needed to cut a deal at that point in time.
For it not to be a lose.
Yes.
Loss.
And yes, thank you very much. And something else again, we walk away with something else again, that the national minimum wage now could be revived in the next 2 years. The cycle has moved. The cycle has moved from 5 years now to 3 years, and we have already eaten into the 3 years.
Indeed.
Yes, we have already eaten into the 3 years.
April.
Yes, April. So in the next 2 years, we'll be sitting down with the social partners and we'll be holding a conversation. Yes, on what the new wage is.
We would say it's a fair, a fair negotiation that came out of it. But let's talk to our Zoom guest, Steve Nwachukwu. Steve, good to have you this morning. This provision of this new minimum wage, we spoke about it, I know, with you earlier, even while this whole negotiation was going on. And one of the fears you had as an economist is the fact that this would affect economy if at all, it goes even beyond 70,000 at this point. But let's take a look at, while we're talking about the workers, which we'll come back to talk to Comrade here on, let's look at the business aspect, the economy aspect of the implications of this. What are your take on this, on the government, and also on the country's revenue and money and treasure bag, and small business owners? What will be the implication of this?
Okay, thank you once again for having me. Yes, the economics of it is that first, it's going to, raise the disposable income of an average worker, and perhaps workers may have more to spend on. And remember that in the recent months or weeks, there is a report from the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria that they have more than 350 billion worth of goods unsold. This is as a result of the weakening naira and the low purchasing power of Nigerians or workers. So when you have an increment in the take home of a civil servant, it will definitely give some level of opportunities for such workers to be able to buy more things, spend in the economy, and improve the aggregate business activities within the economy. But now, if we take it down to the implication on the federating state and organized private sector, their capability and ability to pay, just like Mr. Benson actually expressed, some governors are not even paying the 30,000, talk of paying the 70,000 naira. Is a big challenge that most of these federating states, down to the local government and even the private sector, is going to face, in the sense that a good number of states are not financially viable. A good number of states, except the states like Lagos State, Kano State, Delta, Rivers, and a couple of other states that can independently pay and settle their salaries outside the federation or outside the FAC account through their internal generated revenue. It's only few states, I think less than 5 or 6 of them, can be able to perform these very functions. This is where the big challenge is. Now, we know, yes, we need this very increment. It's a way of national distribution of wealth. When we keep talking about distribution of national wealth, not only through these dubious contractors, we should also distribute national wealth through increment of salaries and wages and palliative to the Nigerian public or the Nigerian citizens, not undermine the implication on the rising inflations, and it should be done in a moderate way, given knowing the fact that when you continually push cash and money in form of salary and wages which are not productive, it will push inflation up. But whatever has been done in this area as we speak, we need a lot of spending in the economy to increase the proportion of spending capacity of Nigeria. Just like I alluded earlier, the low income or the cost of living, which have driven most of these line items up, Nigerians and workers cannot find those very money they needed to buy those basic items and essential items in the society. So it's also affecting the gross earnings of quoted companies, gross earnings of businesses, and gross, in fact, the balance sheets of most of the businesses have gone down because there is a lower patronage of their services or lower patronage of their products and services out there. So it's a big challenge. Then let's look at it from also this very perspective that it would have been much better than, like I do say, that NLC and the rest of them are chasing ghosts. Cost of living have eaten up or whatever, even if they are paid 250,000 naira, the current cost of living, rising cost of items, and hike in prices of these very items have eaten up, even if they are paid 250,000. NLC should be more focused and strategic in their bargaining. Whatever bargaining should focus on healthcare, lower healthcare, focus on mass transit, both interstate and intracity, focus on lower housing schemes, focus on lower and even free education. These are the things that will really give an average worker a kind of relief of what we are passing through as we speak. So basically, whatever they are taking home as we speak cannot still buy those basic items as we speak. The 70,000 cannot buy a bag of rice. That is how ridiculous it is. So,
Mr. Steve, we'll get back to you on that one. Mr. Benson, I know you really want to respond to that, but I want to add to what he said so you can add everything together. Okay, now, he said that, and he actually spoke my mind. You know, the negotiation, was it done in full consideration of the cost of living? Because we're looking at even the hospital. There are so many industries and small businesses that, like he said, are experiencing low patronage due to inflation and cost of living. Would they be able to pay this amount to their employees, knowing that they've always capitalized on low paying, as in paying workers or those low earning workers to do the job for them? So were all of this put into consideration on the negotiation table when it was being done?
Well, first of all, my warm compliments to Mr. Nwachukwu. I like his takeoff, but halfway through, I started to disagree with his logic.
It's allowed.
Yeah. First and foremost, yes, manufacturers associations complained, and I made that point here, that their warehouses were overflowing with unsold. They also said since the introduction of 250% hike in tariff, about 300 of their company members had folded up. These were all issues. These are issues in the public domain. It is important for my co-guests to understand that minimum wage didn't cause that, didn't cause any of these issues. Government policies, faulty policies, and I will briefly itemize them here. The removal of fuel subsidy without adequate preparation. The dealing with the victims, government dealt with the victims instead of dealing with the criminals in that process. So it has not solved the problem.
You're talking about the removal of
fuel subsidy. You know, it raised costs by across board by about 500%. Secondly, the massive devaluation of the naira. We're an import-dependent country. Even for manufacturing countries like China, United States, and so on and so forth, they don't leave their national currencies to the vagaries of the market. They tinker with it. We did that, and we smartly couched it as the merger of multiple exchange rates in order to eliminate blah, blah, blah. The manufacturers initially jumped at it, but they backtracked quickly because that did not even ensure that they had access to foreign exchange. Okay? So what that did was that it raised costs. The second layer of costs. For the nation, it raised the national debt from 72 trillion to 81 trillion instantly. As we speak, it's 90-something trillion. The third policy that imperiled our economy and the business environment is the unreasonable rise in tariff, 250%. People say it is for Band A, but those in Band A are the well-heeled Nigerians and the business sector. They transfer that cost back to everybody. So
Yeah, so you're not paying directly, but
they're paying indirectly. Everybody's paying.
On the purchase
paying the
of
Can I
bank
bought India, please?
the energy sector just profiting from their inefficiency. And then the fourth item that created this problem is the interest rate. I mean, central bank believe that by raising interest rate 26.5% now 26.75%, believing that it will have an impact on inflation, that it will control inflation. It has caused the wrong thing entirely. Now, inflation was trending at 33.7%. It's now 34.1%. Exchange rate at the moment is 1,600 naira to the dollar. The minimum wage has nothing to do with this policy. These policies were put in place before the minimum wage was concluded.
All right, so Comrade.
So the issue is that government policies will have to be revisited. As for the viability of the private sector, the private sector can pay. The states are viable. The states are always viable, and I'll tell you why. What FAC has since moved from 700 billion to 1.2 trillion and still climbing. That is the money they declare and share at the end of every month. So the government are far richer than they used to be. Secondly, crude oil prices are doing very well in the international crude spot market. Doing very well. Okay. In the past, let me tell you.
Can I butt in here, please?
When crude oil prices were low. Yes.
I have another question for you.
Thank you.
So in the past, when crude oil prices were low, government will bring a few dollars in and devalue the naira from the dollar. They get more money. But as it is, crude oil is selling doing very well.
Comrade.
And the naira is considerably weak, so the states are rich.
Okay,
coming to the issue, coming to the final issue he raised about whether about our focus. I would want to assure him that the team of labor, the team that negotiated these wages, was a comprehensive team. We talked about everything, including social costs, health, schools, all of that. We even talked. In fact, we even said. The item 3 in our MOU, October 2nd, 2023. Item 3 on it was that government should give incentive to big businesses and small businesses.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Let's hear from Steve quickly.
Cool.
Yeah, I think Steve has something to say to a response to what you said. All right, Steve Nwachukwu, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate your response, my comrade. We are all comrades in this whether the agitation is coming from those of you in organized labor, is coming from us who are activists in this very sector, trying to provide the best solutions. I think my point is, which you mixed, I'm quite in the same picture with you. You mixed the point. The point is, you should have protested. You should have agitated. You should have gone for the government when they removed fuel subsidy. You should have raised an eyebrow when they floated the naira. You should have gone after them when they increased the interest rate to 26.75%. You should have raised your voice when the issue of all the 4 issues that you mentioned. You went for the thing that is not germane, which is the minimum wage. The cost of living is eating up whatever you are negotiating. That was why you didn't have anything to bargain for. Sorry to say, that is the truth. What you should agitate for is these very 4 items that you mentioned: the interest rate, a better economy, a better exchange rate, a better fuel pricing for energy costs, a better electricity tariff. This is what you should agitate for. This is what is the real main germane, not the monetary, not the few coins that we get, the 70,000, the 250,000. They will have no direct impact in in the lives of an average worker. That is a fact. I know you are doing a lot around that, but that should have been where you should stick your neck and make sure that if not by 50%, fuel subsidy reverse. If not by 100%, by 50%. You should keep the government on their toes to make sure that this very issue.
No, well, so just a moment. Briefly, Mr. Nwachukwu, I do not know where you were when Labour threatened to go on a national strike on the 1st, 2nd of June. The announcement was made on the 29th of May. And by 1st, 2nd of June, we were already, the notice of strike was out. By the 5th of June, the negotiations between us and government had led to signing of MOU. The government will say, we're going to do CNG, we're going to do ABCD. I mean, quite unfortunately, I'm not with the papers here today, but Labour did not sleep on its right. When government also did this hike, 250%, there was a national protest. We shut down the EDs, we shut down TCN. Right. We did all of this. I would want you to at least acknowledge the the effort that Labour made. And also take note, in other countries, it's not Labour that drives these issues per se. Even in Ghana here, when there was a 4% hike, Ghanaians were on the street. Look at Kenyans and the rest. So gentlemen like you, who are quite conversant with these issues, should show solidarity and not sit in your comfort zone believing that you will not be affected in the end. Right, in fact, we took into consideration all these issues. We are aware that 70,000 is really nothing, but 1/10 bread is better than no bread at all.
Understand. As in point are clear, and at the end of the day, we're all here to move Nigeria forward. That is the most important thing. But clearing all of this talk, let's go back to the main reason why we're here, which is the minimum wage and the living wage. So first of all, there's complaint. You also mentioned that the government governors are saying some can pay and some cannot pay. But we have literally seen allocations of the government move forward and
more than double.
Exactly. And there's been a call for why our governments are not really innovative enough to create more internal revenue, considering we have a lot of resources in our states. But then what are the measures put in place? Is there any, in the negotiation that you did with the government, is there any measure put in place for anybody that does not pay the minimum wage, especially governors of the state?
First and foremost, let me answer your question from roundabout. Governors have the wherewithal to pay. All the states are viable, let me tell you. Any state that is not viable will cease to exist automatically. You do understand? So the states are viable. And they are viable to the extent that when it comes to the wages of political office holders, which are uniform, local government councillors and the same salaries across the country, governors do not pay, do not complain. In fact, let me tell you this. The last time there was a wage review for workers, it was about 45%. Between 45 and 50%. The wage review for political office holders was over 400%. The latest one done, which as the revenue mobilization, allocation, and fiscal commission says that they are not yet implementing, is about 143% wage increase. You do understand me? The governors are not complaining. These wages are fixed for across the states. They are not complaining.
So what?
But I'm coming. Now, this national minimum wage, which we say, well, let it be the minimum across board, across the country, below which no entity in the law should be allowed to pay. Some governors are complaining, and it is because in those governors they have no value for labor.
Okay, sir. The question now is, moving forward,
yes,
we need to know the measures that have been put in place to ensure that this is being paid.
I will tell you. I was coming to that part of the question.
All right, sir.
First of all is the law. The law itself is an authority. It's an enforceable law. that if there is a law and you observe that law in breach, there should be consequences. And in that law, there are consequences that you have breached the operation of the law. And when governors do this, they should not expect other citizens to obey the law. But beyond this, we have asked governors who refuse to pay to resign ahead of time, because we are going to take them on. We are going to go to their states. We are going to go to their constituencies, wherever they are. We will go. We did it before.
All right.
So we will do it again. This time in a more coordinated manner.
All right. Let's hear from Steve now. Steve, I want to get your opinion slightly on this, but I also want to get Benson's opinion on it as well. Now, let's talk about small businesses and small firms. Do you think 70,000 naira minimum wage, especially when the Senate president came out to say domestic workers should also be paid same thing, do you think it is realistic that small businesses would survive paying that amount as the minimum wage in Nigeria, vis-a-vis the fact that even governors are coming out to say they cannot pay such amount? What's your thought on all of this, and how would you think it's going to play out in the long run?
Well, just like Comrade was trying to emphasize on the issues of the capability of the state and the revenues of the states. Yes, perhaps it could be, one could say it's a wrong notion that the government or the subnationals are receiving a higher pay or a higher FAC. Yes, it has risen. The last FAC they shared was 1.3 trillion from somewhere around 650, 700. But implicitly speaking, it's worth less than what it were 1 year ago. Implicitly. I'm trying to speak from the point of fundamentals, point of details of this. Let's not be running with the numerical numbers, 1 trillion, 700, and the rest of them. Let's look at the value, the strength of that very naira. The 1.3 trillion shared last month and 650 billion naira shared last 1 year. You'll find out that the 650 is worth more, can purchase more items, is more valuable than the 1.3. That's the point I'm trying to make. Then back to the issues of what can be done to private sectors and domestic staffs. Yes, the Section 3 of the same act, which establishes this new minimum wage, gives it as a penalty. It states the area that it's a law that you must. But Section 4 has some level of exemptions. I know for sure that the law says that if you don't employ up to 25 workers, you are exempted. So those who are employing less than 25 workers are exempted from paying this. So they can still find themselves around paying those or whatever they negotiated with this very, and those who are also in a part-time job. So I'm not sure that what the Senate president were well informed. I don't know any family that has helps or has workers up to 25 workers within a building or within their purview. So I don't think that would be applicable to such individuals. So it's depending on the individuals who wish. Some are even paying more than that. Have in mind is a minimum wage. Is a minimum you can pay. There are some households that receive more than 100,000, 120,000. But the concern is in this very private sector. Those individuals that are employed, like 80 to 90% of their workers falls within this. So it's going to shoot up their salary wage a lot. It's going to affect them. Some institutions has maybe 10 people, 15 people working with them. But there are some institutions or private sectors that are into manufacturing and processing of goods that has mass employment of these low cadre workers.
All right.
So it's going to affect them so much. Like the law says, once you are only exempted if you have less than 25 workers. If you have anything 26, you must implement this law, because just like Comrade said, there is a law, is implementable, and is enforceable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, Steve Nwachukwu, for joining us to give your own take on this matter. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Of course. All right. Quickly, I don't think we've basically covered everything.
Well, I would like to say that
in just a minute.
Yeah, in a minute. I like the conclusion of Comrade Steve Nwachukwu.
Yeah, it's like there was a high note, and then now we're on the level.
Yeah, but in any case, even these small entities, in the end, they will be able to pay. they'll be able to pay. So long as they're able to employ from 25
upwards.
Yeah, they'll be able to pay. We have insisted, and government says they are going to ensure certain incentives go to various sectors of the economy, to the organized private sector and so on and so forth. But more importantly, I appreciate the concern of Mr. Nwachukwu, the value. He's driven by passion for value.
Yeah.
We are also driven by passion for value. It's not as if we're oblivious of that. But what we can grab, we will grab.
Low-hanging fruits.
We'll grab the low-hanging fruits, and we'll keep on insisting that government takes measures, appropriate measures, whether by fiat or by whatever, to ensure that there is value around our national currency, that local production picks up.
The most,
all right.
Indeed.
And all of that.
Indeed.
So
I think that's the best place to
that would be the solution.
Yeah.
And not now fighting Dangote.
No. Okay.
Yes.
That's a topic for another day, Comrade Upah. And definitely, we hope we get to, invite you to come here. You're part of the family.
I would like to
talk
be part
about
of
the
that
future
discussion.
of the country.
Ajay, I would like to be part of that discussion.
Thank you so much, Comrade Benson Upah, for joining us. Appreciate you. All right, that was the spokesman of the Nigerian Labour Congress. I will take a break, and when we come back, we would quickly dive into the front pages of the national dailies. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.